Hi. So today we have Gary and Colleen. Gary recently hired Colleen, and I'm going to ask them to talk about how Kolbe supported them, the process, and how their working relationship was enhanced. So, Gary, why don't you start since it's your business?
Gladly. Thank you, Susan. The process has been eye-opening, in a word, for me from a hiring perspective. And I'll start by telling you that I had several false starts when I hadn't used Kolbe and I was just going on traditional gut instinct and requirement and skill assessments. And a number of false starts and missteps that really tarnished the process for me. And so when you and I engaged to look at my Kolbe, to understand my tendencies and how I work and my engagement level, it was really helpful to build that self-awareness for me. Wasn't a surprise that I'm a strong quick start and I jump right into things, that I start with brainstorming and strategy and innovation. What was readily apparent to me was the fact that my fact finding and my implementation were struggling because I was working under interrupt on everything I was doing simultaneously. And I had an overload of work to do. And so I would time splice it, which means that everything felt like it was a work in progress and nothing felt like it was getting finished. And so doing the Kolbe to recognize that my finishing strong that I really wanted to achieve needed to have a complement to it. And when you shared the whole Kolbe C, the how do we pair up a profile, that was very eye-opening. Now, you know better than anybody that I resisted that. And I delayed it because of my prior experience with the whole hiring process. And I just forged my way through it. Not proud of that, but that was my tendency and that was my action.
I nudged you for a while.
Oh, you nudged me in a great way, and I thank you for that. And it wasn't until I finally engaged with you and we had that dialogue around how that would work that the thought and process started flowing. When you introduced me to Colleen and her perspective, the real eye opener there was the complement of fact finding and quick start that I would be able, and I trusted in your assessment of the comparison of the two, much like I think Colleen had at the time. And the excitement for me was I was going to be able to work with someone on a professional level to be able to finish my work in progress projects and get them to completion. But I had a big concern about the spectrum of work that I do. It's varied. So it either would take someone skilled and capable to be able to be versatile and do enough fact finding and implementation to become adept at doing this business area and then shift over to this business area and be able to do that dynamically. And you and I talked, Susan, about whether that's one or two resources that would be dedicated. And ideally, I said I would love it if it were one, because then I could just openly share and shift as I needed to. And you brought me Colleen.
Well,
And
and just to share, I'm not a traditional recruiter. I don't go looking for people. I had met Colleen and I were working on
yeah,
some projects together, and Gary and I had created the target of what we wanted you to hire. And we were on pause there. And then when I met Colleen and said, oh my God, I got this sense that she would be
yeah.
great. And she fit, she was an A fit for what you were looking for.
And the fact that there was a fit to assess, I think, is extremely powerful.
Right. We had the target of what we were looking for.
Yeah, because you and I I was having the dialogue with you prior to that for what, 2 years plus, uh, to just talk about my instinctive sense of what that role might be and what the skill sets might be and how it might work. But it wasn't scientific, it was subjective. It was my speculation on how I thought it might work. You applied the science of Kolbe to it, and that to me was eye-opening to look at not only my self-awareness of who I am and how I work, but what would be a complement for me. The fact that we did that, there was a fit to think about. And I think the epiphany you had when you met Colleen, I'm not giving you credit as a recruiter. I'm giving you credit for that insight to be able to put that fit together. Yeah.
That was really fun. And so and I had Colleen's Kolbe A because of the project she was working on for me. So we were able to score her for what you were looking for. So
Yeah.
that was really wonderful. Then you guys met, you guys thought, okay, this is great. You were going to do a test, I think, for a couple months. And I had a meeting with the two of you together to talk about your patterns and how patterns would play out on the job. Actually, it was lovely because you complement each other. You're a little bit different, but not too far off. Talk about the onboarding process that we did and how that supported working smarter together quickly. Colleen, do you want to say anything about that since you're the employee?
I know. Just to back up, just from my background is in recruiting, and being very transparent, Susan, I did not know that I was in some ways being assessed for this role. So, and when you talk to me, not as my coach, but as my, friend and also employer, I was really hesitant about this role. Like, I come from corporate America, have spent 30 years of intense work that was really challenging on my lifestyle and balance. And this really, even just because I trusted you, we did this indicator and you said, wow, this is going to be a great relationship and you guys are going to work together in a wonderful way. It really cinched my decision and allowed me to say, okay, I can move forward. I'm going to try to put some boundaries so I can evaluate the real work that we're doing. Is this a good fit? And obviously I was not onboarding me. Gary was. So I was reacting to the way he was training me. What I will say, and I shared with you, and I don't think I've shared this with Gary, but as a new employee, I honestly, I have not woken up every day and been like, I cannot wait to sit down and see what we're going to work on today. And oh my God, I get to do a piece of communications and maybe I can tweak it in a creative way, or I get to look at, a new tool and try to figure out how to use it. And am I learning? And Gary is someone, we were talking about this morning, just will always teach. And he will always, and part of this is his Kolbe. So as a fact finder, I mean, he gives me all these facts. So I can just kind of assess them. So to answer your question, I think I felt very well onboarded, almost like more information than I could assimilate. But within, almost 6 months, it was so helpful to go back to this. And you think about it as a professional relationship, you do want to work with your boss to assess, like, how is this going? Oh, I forgot that was this, I can see why this might be niggling at you, Gary. And maybe I need to amp up my documentation of processes. Like, this is something that I know I need to do a little bit better job. So it was almost more eye-opening as like a midpoint, come up for air and go, wow, I actually see these intrinsics. Like I'm not sure how much I've taken lots of indicators in my life, but this just saying like, what's the worst mistake you could make for Gary? And in the kind of so what's and just I don't know, it's just been very interesting to see how we both have recognized that and actually not done those things kind of intuitively. And maybe that's because we're mature and have been through a lot of professional experiences that we have those instincts. But
Well, and Colby gave us this report, right, that compared the two of you. We call it the A to A report, and it gave
yeah,
hints. We call them conative hints. It gave specific suggestions on how to work smarter, and we went through that. So that's really neat that you're going back to it.
yeah,
I like the way you framed that, Colleen. That was really nicely done. The hand in glove fit that just clicked, reinforced for me, Colleen, in the way you said that, and I want to say this for Susan, is, and we were just joking, we joke about it, but we were joking about it this morning. I will tend, Susan, to err on the side of explaining something ad nauseum. I will give the backstory and all the details necessary. What I didn't realize, now for my kids, that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all for them. With Colleen and the work that we're doing, because she's a fact finder, that my need to explain and her need to get as much data, they just go hand in glove. And so she takes that with her then professionalism, her creative sense, her initiative, and her professionalism, and she runs with that to completion in a way that I almost can't and haven't, which is why my frustration of all my work in progress things. So if I can give her the download of that, she takes it and runs with it and takes it across the finish line in such a grand manner. And that has been a lot of the magic that I have felt in our working relationship, that now when we go back and look at the pairing and the cognitive aspects of it, it's like, wow, that's science at work.
And it's really neat what you're pointing to as we finish up this conversation is Colby's not the only data point we use in terms of making a hire. It just helps understanding the action that somebody's going to take.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that Colleen has terrific professional experience for 30 years, she's very bright, she's very motivated. That's all separate from what Kolbe tells us, but it sort of nails the action, the innate pattern that both of you have, which is great. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sure people will understand, will be thrilled to hear about this.